Welcome to the Airbnb Roadmap, the podcast designed to navigate you through the entire journey of short-term rental success, whether you're just starting out or ready to take your hosting game to the next level. My husband and I became super hosts within just months of launching our first Airbnb and have proudly kept that title ever since. With over 300 reviews and an overall 4.95 star ratings, we picked up a hack or two I'm excited to share with you. In each episode, I break down the strategies, insights, and industry secrets that set profitable short-term rentals apart. From choosing the right property, understanding local regulations, and obtaining your first listing to go beyond just the basics, I'm here to share everything you need to succeed. So, if you're ready to map out your path to Airbnb success and unlock the full potential of short-term rentals, join me on the Airbnb Roadmap. Your journey starts here. Hello, I'm Brittany Wenninger, and today's episode will make you think outside of the box. But before we actually get into the episode, I do want to give you a little life update about the short-term rental that I was so debating about a couple episodes ago. And ultimately, drum roll please, we actually decided to put an offer on the house and we actually got it accepted. So we definitely negotiated and overall got around $25,000 off of the listed price, which is absolutely amazing. We did already go through the inspection, so that is looking good. There was some things that popped up on the inspection that we didn't really think about or notice while we were at the property. And that's why having inspections are so important, because we didn't see that there was a wall that was wet. And the reason why it's wet is because that wall butts up to a chimney and there's some seepage that's like water seepage going between the chimney and the exterior part of the home. Now, we could fix this by literally just caulking that area to make sure that there's no water getting into that, the cracks and crevices and all that good jazz. So the fix is pretty simple. Now, we could professionally fix it, and that's going to cost some money. But overall, we're young investors. We know, my husband's a handy one. I just kind of stand there and look pretty. But we can do this stuff ourselves. So we're just going to caulk that area, put a fan on that wall, and call it good. But anyways, so that showed up on the inspection report. And the funny thing is, with negotiations, you want to make sure that obviously you have leverage first. So in this case, I made it a big deal saying this wall is a huge concern of ours. We're kind of afraid to keep on going through this transaction. But I know that you already gave us $25,000 off, which we so appreciate. However, we would like some of the furniture in the cabin. And I negotiated about 10-ish, I think it's 10 furniture pieces that would actually look really nice in the final design for this cabin. And then I also negotiated a deep clean because honestly the cabin was kind of gross and had a lot of spider webs and stuff like that. So I negotiated deep clean in there as well. So even though overall Clay and I were pretty set with the inspection and we didn't really see anything that was huge alarm to us, we still wanted to make sure that we had the leverage to negotiate other things in the transaction, because why not? If you have the leverage, just go for it, right? So that is the life update of Clay and I with another short-term rental. And it's one of those things that when we get short-term rental under contract, we take every single one of them very seriously and we get so hyped up on every single one. When I just told Clay how I negotiated all these furniture pieces in the deal, he was jumping up and down. He was super giddy. Even the small stuff like that still gets us so excited because we are such addicts with this. And that little boost of heck yeah, let's get this. It was just so exciting. And especially when they countered us and we're oh, okay, sweet. we were just through the moon. So every single short-term rental is still very, very exciting. So that is the life update. Now we can actually get into the episode. This episode is all about Airbnb arbitrage. So if you have never heard of this, I don't blame you. This is one of those things that not a lot of people know about. And this is just a very, I wouldn't say easy, but a cost-effective way to get into the game without spending an arm and leg and have a lot of risk to it. So Airbnb rental arbitrage is a real estate strategy used by investors who can't afford to buy a property or honestly just don't want to involve themselves into the burden of owning a property themselves. Under this strategy, you rent a property from a landlord and sublet it to a third party, such as short-term rentals. So in essence, you are literally just renting out a duplex or an apartment or condo or whatever it may be. You are renting out space to then make it into your own short-term rental. Now, this is a great strategy if, again, you don't really have that much money in the bank and you really want to get into short-term rentals, you want to get into the game and make it lucrative. I know a couple investors have actually started this way and now they have like multi-million-dollar portfolios, but this is how they started because not a lot of people, one, even want to purchase a legit property, or two, they just can't do it anyways. So renting out a space to then host guests will not only get you into the game, but it will also make sure that you get enough money to eventually purchase your very first property, own that property, and then make that property into a short-term rental. Because the way that you grow in this industry is, one, obviously the cash flow is super nice, but two, the appreciation. So if you are looking to not use a lot of partners in your journey with short-term rental, you want to make sure that you are utilizing the snowball effect, which is literally purchasing a property, having it run as a short-term rental for a couple years, and then cash out refinance, use that cash out refinance, and then purchase your second one, third one, fourth one, or whatever number you may be on. So that is the snowball effect, and you can't really do that with Airbnb arbitrage. But you can just get started in the game with Airbnb arbitrage, get that money to then purchase your very first one, and then start that snowball effect afterwards. Now, there's a lot of chit chat out in the industry saying that Airbnb arbitrage is actually illegal. While there's no explicit federal, state, or local laws that deem this practice illegal, it's actually very crucial to get the property owner's permission to actually sublet the property. Without consent, you could face legal shenanigans, which also includes evictions. But that's one of those things that we're going to talk about in this episode, is how to actually get one of these properties. So I'm going to list off 10 top cities that Airbnb arbitrage is actually really known for. Charleston, North Carolina. I don't think I said that one right, but you know what I meant. Providence, Rhode Island. Jacksonville in Florida. Nashville, Tennessee. Northport in Florida. Sacramento in California. Virginia Beach in, Virginia. Cape Coral in Florida, New Orleans in Louisiana, and Austin, Texas. So these are the top cities that Airbnb arbitrage is known for in that area. Now, these cities have said that about their occupancy rate is about like 50 to 60%, which isn't that bad, especially for not paying taxes or any of that shenanigans. Obviously, you do have to pay your rent every month, but you're not paying crazy amount in taxes and your mortgage shouldn't be that much. Well, you have rent, but usually mortgage is more than rent, right? I did find all this information on skift.com, skift.com. So if you want to check out their website, they do have a lot of great information on Airbnb arbitrage, but those are the top 10 cities that have it. The very first thing you want to do when trying to do the Airbnb arbitrage is first contact the city first. You want to make sure that all of your ducks are in the row and you can actually do it. Now, if you are seeing a lot of other people rent out their space on Airbnb, it's a good indicator that, like, yeah, you can probably do it too. But you really don't know because those people might be grandfathered in. So make sure to call the city first and be like, hey, if I go up to an apartment complex and I get the landlord's okay to rent out my space on Airbnb, is that okay if I do that for the city? Like, will the city actually give me permission to do this? Because at the end of the day, the city will definitely see your property on Airbnb and call you out. Now, again, the risk is pretty minimum. Like, if they call you out and say, hey, you can't actually do this, then you just spent all that money on furniture, and that's pretty much it. You could be locked into that lease, but the city's probably going to catch you soon enough that the landlord's going to be like, hey, you're only in here for like a week or two, maybe a month. Give me another month's rent and I'll let you off the hook. Or go find your own sublet that will actually just be here for a long period of time. Now, once the city gives you the green check, then you can start going to other complexes and ask the landlord for their permission. Thinking of listing your property on Airbnb? Here's an exciting opportunity just for you. When you sign up and use my name, Brittany Wenninger, you'll receive exclusive guidance on your profile. I'll work with you personally to make your listing shine, highlighting what makes your property special, appealing to the guests, and ensuring it stands out from the rest. Plus, you'll receive $48 when you launch and host your first guest in 180 days from signing up with the link in my show notes. It's a unique chance to get an insider perspective and boost your listing's appeal from day one. Don't just list your property. Let's make it unforgettable. Again, sign up by clicking the link in the show notes and let's elevate your Airbnb game together. Now, obviously, every city does have Airbnb arbitrage, but just make sure that you are asking the landlord. So how you do this is you will find a apartment complex. This process might take a while, not gonna lie, but if you're dedicated to getting into the game, especially with low risk, the wait is worth it. So go to an apartment complex and just pitch them your idea. Now, you want to make sure that this is actually worth it for them as well, because they are putting a lot of risk into saying yes for you to have guests with Airbnb, Vrbo, or whatever it may be. So this might include paying more rent than a normal person. Also might include a higher security deposit. Maybe instead of being there for 6 months, they say, hey, let's just try this out for 3 months, and so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, they are actually putting a lot of risk and trust into you, knowing that you hopefully have vetted these guests that are staying in the apartment, and that also it won't disturb the other people that are obviously living in the apartment complex. So there's going to be a lot of give and take here. Other places that you can think about for having Airbnb arbitrage is literally just finding like half a duplex that is being rented out or a full duplex. Those are great because, one, you don't really have that many neighbors, and two, those landlords aren't managed by a huge property manager. Usually those landlords are just, a single person that purchased the property, wants to rent it out, and now they are renting it out, but that renter is now doing short-term rental. The con to this, however, is that when you pitch this idea to that investor, they will actually start thinking, I wonder if I can just do this myself. Because you're an investor, you're talking to another investor, you both have something in common, and that is obviously investing and making a lot of money. So when you pitch this idea, I would just be a little cautious because they can 100% be like, hey, I'm going to reject this pitch, but I'm actually going to do it myself. Thanks for this great idea. Now, there are landlords that will actually agree to your terms just because they don't want to deal with any of that short-term rental shenanigans. Like, they got into long-term rentals because they just want to forget it and collect that money every single month. So just remember that everyone has a different story in their investment journey, and that just might be something that a landlord doesn't want to get into. So it doesn't hurt to try. I will say, obviously, it's a lot more difficult to find Airbnb arbitrage properties than just normal Airbnb properties, but your risk is a lot lower, and then obviously you aren't bringing as much money to the table because you're not actually purchasing any properties. Now, once you find a property that the landlord has given you a thumbs up, one, make sure to actually get this in writing. If you don't have this in writing, then you don't really have permission. I always get everything in writing because then you can go to whoever you need to tell and say, hey, here's the evidence that they are allowing me to do this. Are we good with moving forward? You also want to make sure that this is in your lease, that the lease that you signed says the landlord is giving me permission to make the space into a short-term rental and renting it out to third-party people. Obviously, your lease is going to sound a lot more legal than what I just said, but that's what a good old attorney's for, and they will draft that up. They will make it sound very legal. Pretty much, they'll make it so you can't even read the verbiage, and you can move forward. Now, once you have passed this stage, you want to actually start designing the space. So when you design the space, just remember you are renting the space. So you don't want to put a lot of holes in the walls. You obviously want to get permission to paint any of the walls and all of that shenanigans. But if you have gone to this stage, I'm sure more people are going to see that you have that property as a short-term rental, and there's going to be other people that will contact that landlord to get into that space as well. So you want to make sure that your property is still standing out, even though it's the only one in the area. Because I will guarantee you that once you do it, other people will follow, and we don't want you to fall behind just because you thought that you were comfortable and safe and had complete control of the market, because this is an industry that will change a lot. So never get comfortable. I know that sounds bad, but it's true. Never get comfortable. Always make sure to go on Airbnb and see if there's other people that are now involved in that market, and make sure that your property is standing out. Some of the ways to stand out, just like we talked about in other episodes, is amenities. Make sure that there's games in there and there's just stuff to do if it's a really rainy day, right? And also make sure that your property is very trendy. So people don't want to go into a cookie cutter apartment or a cookie cutter property. They want to have an experience when they walk in. So have really funky stuff that normal people will not have in their property. And that is one of the ways to be a scroll stopper, is people look at your design, they're like, whoa, I would never have thought about that. Okay, so your design is now done. You have a scroll stopping apartment complex, or I guess apartment, and now it's time to get it launched on Airbnb, Vrbo, and all the other platforms that you obviously want your listing to be promoted on. When you do this, it's literally just like any other property, but for the check-in, this is crucial because I know a lot of apartment complexes have like, the fobs, and they have a front desk person and all of that little security shenanigans. It's not shenanigans. Like, this is actually really important for security and all that good jazz, but it's still kind of annoying that you have to, check in at the front desk and all that. Anyways, you want to make sure that your check-in instructions is very, very detailed. I know Clay and I went to a apartment complex in New Zealand. I think it was Auckland, New Zealand. And I just giggle so much because this was at midnight. This was the very first time that Clay drove a car on the opposite side of the road, and, everything's reversed in the other countries, right? So he was already very stressed about that. And we get to our Airbnb, and her instructions were so confusing. I felt like that we're like doing a huge scavenger hunt. And I was like, God, like, I love scavenger hunts. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to do it in another country at midnight. The area looks nice, but you never know. So the very first instruction was like, go to this address. There's going to be a lockbox that's tall. Here's the number that the lockbox will have on it, and here's the code. Well, this lockbox was not even at the property, so we had to go to a whole nother location just to get this one key for this one apartment complex. Now, we found it. I'm like, oh yeah, like scavenger hunt number 1 done. Like step number 1 complete, right? Now we get to the actual property, and I see that there's all of these keys and a fob. And I'm like, all right, Clay, I'm going to jump out. I'm going to try to open up these doors with the key and the fob and all that stuff. I tried every single key, and I tried the fob. And again, I'm a full-time realtor, and keys are my thing. Like, I can figure out how to open up, big complexes and whatnot. And I could not figure this out. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's now 12:30/1 o'clock in the morning. I just want to go to bed. Like, I'm getting really irritable. And we attempted to get into this place probably for like 20 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's instructions are so poor. I feel like I'm like just trying to figure out what she's trying to say in the first place, and then, try to get in. Well, the garage door was the entry, and I didn't realize that on the keychain was actually a fob, but it was also a garage door opener. Like, there was a button on the fob. So this was like some high-tech stuff that I've never seen before. That was like a fob and a garage door opener. And Clay like brought the car close to the garage. I pushed the button and we got in. And I was like, oh my gosh. 30 minutes later, we finally got in, and we parked the car, and there was like a certain number we had to park the car in. And it was just it was a shit show. It really was. And we finally found the apartment number. We got in, and we crashed so hard that night that I think that we woke up at like 11 o'clock in the morning the next day. And we are usually people that are like up and at 'em at like 6 a.m. on the weekends. And it was a lot. So that was a long story, but make sure that your check-in instructions are so, so detailed. If they are lacking detail, people are going to get so upset. They're not going to leave you good reviews, and it's not going to be a good experience. So make sure that your check-in instructions are not a scavenger hunt, because no one likes to do that, especially if they're checking in at like late at night. Also, with Airbnb Arbitrage, you want to make sure that your rules are very strict, because you have to remember that these apartments are right next to other people that potentially are working early in the morning. They have kids. Like, this is their life, and they actually live in these apartments. Now, there are some apartment complexes that every single apartment is actually an Airbnb, but if you are starting a trend in this one complex, you probably are going to be the only one. So make sure that your guest knows when quiet time is. Quiet time could possibly be at 9 o'clock. Personally, Clay and I go to bed at 8:30. So we always make sure that all of our Airbnbs have quiet time at 9 p.m. because I wouldn't want to be a neighbor and hear so many laughter and chatter and screaming and all that at 10 p.m. Like, I would get super mad. And then I would probably report that apartment for being too loud. I'm not one to report anyone, but if I was in a situation that let's just say I was a doctor and had to do a 24-hour shift, I don't want to be dealing with the next door neighbor. Now, the big risk factor to Airbnb arbitrage is obviously eviction. So if you are starting to get a lot of complaints, that landlord can just be like, hey, I'm so sorry, this isn't working out. And then they can just boot you out. And all you do is literally take your furniture, because that is literally pretty much all the stuff that you paid for. Now, with a normal property, it takes a lot for someone to evict you. Obviously, you won't get evicted, but it will take a lot for your short-term rental to just shut down. So that is, I would say, the biggest risk to doing Airbnb arbitrage is just getting shut down because other people's complaints and worrisomes and all that. But is the risk worth the reward? I personally would say yeah. Because if you are just trying to get into this game and you need the money to do that, this is a great starting point of getting that very first Airbnb arbitrage, having the cash flow, and then using that money to purchase a property and then start that snowball effect. One thing is to actually save the money that you made with Airbnb arbitrage and put it into the property instead of spending it, because I know it's super tempting to say like, oh my gosh, I just made $15,000 this year from this apartment and I'm going to go buy a really nice fancy TV. Like, don't do that. Start saving that money for the down payment for your very next property. With all of that being said, and you are someone that actually thinks outside the box, I really hope that this idea really perked your interest, because this is such a good starting point. If you have any questions whatsoever about this, please reach out to me on Instagram, the Airbnb Roadmap, and I would love to help you out, just because this is scary. It's always going to be scary starting something new. And if I can help out any way possible, please let me know. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Airbnb Roadmap. If you're loving these episodes and want to keep the conversation going, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who's ready to dive into the world of short-term rentals. Got a question or topic you would love to hear about? Reach out. This podcast is all about growing and learning together. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, the Airbnb Roadmap. Can't wait to see you there. Until next time, here's to turning your short-term rental dreams into thriving realities. I'll see you next time.